Alpha-Gal syndrome was something that was once extremely rare in this country. That is a fact, but it is becoming more and more common as more people develop an allergy to red meat after getting bitten by a Lone Star tick, which is the tick you see with the white dot on its back. And over the last several years, cases of alpha-Gal syndrome have skyrocketed by almost 10,000%. And now, headline after headline, all asking the same question: how could a tick-borne illness suddenly be impacting so many people, not just people living in rural America, but in suburban America as well? And then we heard from Dr. Matthew Lau at the World Science Festival 10 years ago.
People eat too much meat, right? And if they were to cut down on their consumption on meat, then it would actually really help the planet. There's this thing called the Lone Star tick, where if it bites you, you'll become allergic to meat. I can sort of describe the mechanism. So that's something that we can do through human engineering. We can kind of possibly address really big world problems through human engineering.
Oh, okay. And then you start to connect the dots even more, and you find out that Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation spent millions of dollars funding genetically engineered ticks, and that Bill Gates is also a major investor in lab-grown meat. And now we've got almost 500,000 Americans living with a rare tick-borne illness that makes people allergic to meat, but not the lab-grown meat that Bill Gates has invested in. You think maybe this is not a coincidence after all?
The question is, my friends, is the spread of ticks across the country that we are seeing intentional, manufactured, or just coincidence? What I will say is, it is very difficult sometimes. You have a guy associated with the World Economic Forum saying we should induce allergies into humans so they can no longer eat red meat. You then have a massive explosion in this particular tick population that makes people allergic to red meat. And at the same time, you have investment into lab-grown meats. And it's possible to engineer that lab-grown meat to have no alpha-gal molecule, meaning if you become allergic to red meat, you'll always be able to buy their lab-grown alternatives. Now, I will say this. I don't know if there's any kind of real conspiracy. I mean, certainly these people's interests are aligned in this direction. The production of lab-grown meat and the questions over whether we eat too much are born from the same reality. These Malthusian, climate change, whatever you want to call it, individuals, Malthusian, of course, meaning they think there's too many people, are both at the same time advocating we stop eating meat and trying to develop alternatives to, raising cattle. So I don't want to say that it's a connection that Lone Star is propagating and lab-grown meat is being developed. That guy, I believe his name is Dr. Matthew Lau, says, hey, look, what if people were allergic to meat? You couldn't eat it. In the minds of these individuals, they say, stop eating meat. He goes in this direction, and it's possible that Bill Gates or other people go in the lab-grown meat direction. Let me see. Let me figure out. How much did... Bill Gates is a major investor in lab-grown cultivated meat industry, yes, but how much? How much invested? That's what I'm wondering. Let's see. And Richard Branson are betting big. Bill Gates invested $17 million in a Series A for Memphis Meats in 2017.
Disease control and prevention show emergency room visits for tick bites are higher than normal here in the Midwest. Ticks obviously very dangerous. They can spread viruses like Lyme disease.
Your Memorial Day weekend may include some outdoor plans and even travel up north. And one thing you'll need to watch out for are ticks. The CDC is reporting a record number of ER visits for tick bites, and the season is on track to be one of the worst.
Well, a newer kind of tick-borne illness that presents as a sudden allergy to eating meat is starting to become more common on Long Island.
All right, Fox 5's Jody Goldberg breaks down what to know about alpha-Gal syndrome and why we're seeing more cases.
Long Island's a hotbed for ticks, and more recently we're hearing about alpha-Gal syndrome. It presents itself as a meat allergy, and it happens after a person is bitten by a Lone Star tick. I'm with one of those people, Holly Raycroft. She says she's an avid camper. When did you know that this wasn't your typical tick bite?
I had been bitten by a tick about 2 months prior, and we had a big pot roast dinner. That evening, I started with hives. It developed into breathing difficulties, and we ended up at the hospital.
Holly's allergist, Dr. Erin McGinty, has treated more than 1,000 patients with alpha-Gal syndrome.
When was your first case?
So I made my first diagnosis of alpha-gal syndrome at some point in 2011. Alpha-gal is a carbohydrate that's found in all non-primate mammals. It's also found in the saliva and GI tract of Lone Star ticks. So if a person gets bitten by one of these ticks, and if they're in that subset of the population that makes this immune response, the Lone Star tick bite is going to induce their immune system to start making this allergy antibody.
We reached out to the New York State Department of Health and we're told they track several tick-borne diseases, but not alpha-gal syndrome. It's not mandatory, and officials say just because a person tests positive doesn't mean they have the allergy.
A positive test is not the same thing as having alpha-gal syndrome, but it does suggest that there is potential risk in that patient.
What's something that you go through living with alpha-gal that people may not even think of?
How many items are actually processed or made with beef?
Does it ever go away?
If you can go long enough without getting bites, it will gradually go down.
And to avoid tick bites, doctors say use bug spray with DEET and check yourself immediately after being outside.
I spoke with a couple of Tampa Bay area doctors today, and they say that they are seeing tick bites come into their hospitals right there in their ER. And so tonight they shared some tips on what you need to do to keep yourself safe. Wherever there's grass, bushes, and leaves, there may be ticks. Dr. Kartik Cherbuti tells me Florida is not immune.
For the Tampa Bay area, honestly, almost every home. Not to be alarmist, but saying it's common. So just knowing that even in a yard, you can have that in your own backyards.
As the chief epidemiologist at Tampa General Hospital, he says they have been treating people for tick bites. The CDC reports a record number of visits to the emergency room for tick bites in April, the highest since 2017.
If someone's taken a picture of the tick, we can sometimes identify what kind of tick it is. And some carry human illnesses, some don't.
As school lets out for the summer and people gear up for a holiday weekend, tick season is upon us. Some ticks spread diseases like alpha-gal syndrome, where you develop a red meat allergy, ehrlichiosis, and Lyme disease.
Typically, Lyme disease will start with a red bump where that tick was, and that red bump will start to expand and get bigger.
Dr. Evelyn Huang with Orlando Health Bayfront in St. Pete says they are common, and there are steps to remember while outside.
And ticks can be very small and hard to spot, and especially checking your scalp or areas that are covered in hair, just because sometimes they can hide in there and you don't know that they're there.
She says you want to use tweezers to remove one as soon as you spot it, and watch for any symptoms like a fever or rash. Prevention is simple. Wear protective clothes like long sleeves and pants, and take a bath as soon as you get home.
What I would do with my own family is, if we're planning, know that we're going to be out in a wooded area or a grassy area. Just like we would carry our spray for mosquito-borne illness, we'll carry things that protect us both from mosquitoes and ticks.
Dr. Cherbuti says that he's actually removed a tick before while out with his family, and he says those first 24 hours are crucial to help prevent disease.